Hello everyone. Welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, my name's Melanie and I'm so glad you're here. And to my returning art and craft friends, I'm so glad you're taking an art break with me today. Today is Tuesday's draw along tutorial and I'm going to be showing you the September birthday flowers. I'm going to show you how to draw them and then I'm going to be showing you how to do the watercolor steps. I'm going to break it down into some easy steps for you to be able to follow along, and you too will be able to create this fun September birthday card. We're going to continue with the series. I do have other ones for the other months. I'll create a playlist and put that in the description. You might want to follow along if you're interested in creating more birthday flowers. For those of you who would like to have a little bit help drawing, I do have a subscription at my Ko-fi site, and there it's called the Sketchbook subscription. It's really reasonably priced and easy to join, and you might want to pop over there. It's okay to trace. Sometimes it just makes a quick process of doing an art break, and you might just want a reference to be able to draw yours as well. Well, let's get started with the drawing stages. The month of September has two flowers, the Morning Glory and the Aster. All of the birthday flowers do have two different flowers, and mostly we've been doing one, but today I thought I would take them both and make a pretty little composition out of them both together. Now you can draw them separately and they would be beautiful by themselves, or you could try to create a composition, and I'm going to show you how I did that. Now I'm going to start with the Aster flower. It's a simple little flower. The insides of the flower are a cone shape or disc shape, I guess is what we'd want to say. It's a flattened disc shape like this. So when you draw the flower, you can either draw it straight on, which would be like a donut shape with this part here. If you want to draw your flowers more at an angle, go ahead and do like a flying saucer shape, a little bit sideways. Move the center of your flower up, and then this will help you do the automatic foreshortening of your petals. You want to draw them longer. They're longer petals and they come to a little bit of a point. And as you go around your little shape by drawing this flying saucer shape, this is going to help you do the foreshortening already. So you're going to come to the back. Now you wouldn't see the back all the way to the tip. So then I'm going to start curving it this way, and I'm going to get shorter and longer. They're going to be short back here and then get longer as they come forward. This is a great way to be able to figure out the petal position of your flowers. And the centers or the stems would always come from the middle of your center part of your flower. Underneath there is where your little stems would come off of. Now this particular flower grows as a cluster. So there would be other ones that would come off, like little branches that come up like this. And then there could be another flower here. So I could draw another disc here, say my circles here, follow it around like I just did this one. I could make this one a little bit flatter, add my circle to there, and then you just build your petals on top of there. So in my drawing here, I have 1, 2, 3 fuller ones, and then you might want to do one that's more of a bud. And a bud, you would come up and you would do it closed. It's more closed, and these would be your petals off and up this way where it's partially open. And then it would have a little green cap that's underneath here. Now the leaves for this flower are pretty simple. They are just a longer pointy leaf. There's not a lot of shape. Normally at the top, those are the more immature leaves, so they're going to be smaller, so they would be a small leaf, and there's usually one off this other side, and then they're going to get bigger as they come down, and those are the more mature leaves, and they fold down. They generally point down or have a little bit of a droopiness to them. That's how you make the leaves for that particular flower. Pretty easy, and you can do it very quickly when you're painting, depending on how much of a part that you want to be able to do, how much attention to detail you would like to do. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Morning Glory. Morning Glories are such a pretty flower. I think I'm going to try planting some next year. We're going to start, it does have 5 petals, but all 5 petals are joined together. But there is a star shape that you would see in there, but the petals are all connected together. They're not separate petals. So what we'd like to do here, and depending on how much it's showing, it's also a bell shape. It has that bell shape underneath there. So depending on the angle of your flower, depends on how much of that you're going to see. So straight on, it would be more of a ruffle, a gentle ruffle with your center in here. And then it's a star shape. So you're going to have that 5 shapes there. That would be what you would see when you do a full on, straight on. There would be a little bit of a center there where your stamen is. And you're not going to necessarily see this trumpet part of your flower. Now to do the one that's sideways, you're going to do that same shape. That's a real gentle ruffle, but you're going to do it more in a shape of how we did this, where it was more of a flattened shape, or I always call it a flying saucer shape, but that's not really what it is. So we'd see that underneath. So just by drawing it more elongated and having that little shape underneath, it's going to indicate that your flower is more sideways. You'd put a little stamen here, and then you do that star shape here off to the side to section it off. This is where your watercolor is going to be darker normally, is where you would see those little ridges. And that's how you do that particular flower. Now to do the cap part here, where our flower is going to come in and be green, we have these little pieces that come off the top. They just fold over and cap off the flower. Now they can come down, and the leaf for a morning glory has a pretty little shape. It's actually a heart. So it's a heart-shaped leaf that comes around. There is a center vein and some lines that come off, and then that's going to attach to your vine of your flower. They also have another fun element that you can add. They do have those little those little, I'm going to say it wrong, but those little fine curly tendrils, that's what I want to say. They have little tendrils that come off of there. Now they can also have a bud that's not open. It can come out. And this would be that little shape that we've drawn before on our other flowers. It's going to be rounded here, like a little smile face, come down. And then this just kind of twists up. It's going to be a little tight little form right here is going to happen. You're going to see that. And that's what your little bud is going to look like for a morning glory. So a couple different buds that you could add to your picture. So let's talk about a little bit about putting some sort of composition together. So for the composition I did, I ended up choosing 2 of the larger morning glories, and then I put in a little twig of the asters, and those asters are kind of in the background, and my morning glories are in the front. And I chose them just because they're big, beautiful flowers. I put those up front, and then put my little one asters in behind, kind of like a filler flower. And it does go off to my side. I do like to have compositions a lot of times that end in a corner. And I like that way. And for my wording and my lettering, I put the word September because it's the September flower. And then I added the morning glory, and then I put the words. Did you know that there were words for each of the flowers too? So if you want to add those on, look up to see what some of the words are. So this one is love and affection. And Aster is over here, and that stands for patience, wisdom, and faithfulness. Now we have it all set up. I just went ahead and did my ink work a little bit first on there, so I didn't have to do my lettering. It's all freehand lettering. It's just my own hand lettering, and lettering is kind of like a drawing skill. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get. And sometimes we're the worst critics of our own handwriting. So I say, get a little bit of a notebook sitting by where you watch TV and start practicing some real common words for that season that we are in. So I'm definitely going to be writing pumpkin, leaves, all different types of sayings. So take some time if you enjoy lettering. Just keep a little notebook where you might sit and watch TV or something like that, that it's a quiet spot, and practice your lettering. It's very therapeutic, or at least I find it is. So let's go ahead now and start the watercolor steps. I'm going to be doing a loose color watercolor that I liked and I enjoy doing. I don't do anything super sophisticated. I like simple and easy. So I'm going to show you those steps next. So let's hop on over to the watercolor steps. For my colors today, I'm going to be using, for the centers of my asters, I'm going to be using cadmium yellow medium. Add that a little bit of on there. And then the Indian yellow, I'll be tapping a little bit of that color in there. And then I will be using a little bit of umber just to darken and probably mix my browns a little bit as well. For the petals, I'm going to be just using the color violet, which is a beautiful shade of purple, is what I'm going to be using for those flowers. And then for my morning glories, I'm going to be choosing ultramarine blue for my flowers for the morning glories. It's very much what I think of being a morning glory color. But the asters do come in different colors. You could look online to see what colors they come in. They do come in pinks and all those different colors. I'm going to start out by tapping in a little bit of this of my cadmium yellow, and I want to create just a little bit of a look of a texture. So I have about ink consistency. It's not too loaded with color pigmentation yet, and I'm going to be tapping that in on my surface. I'm going to leave just a touch bit white inside of those little centers just to have, perhaps I want to highlight and I don't want to cover it all up. So I'm coming in with that color. Now I'm going to be coming into my Indian yellow. I'm going to come right into my pan. I don't want a lot of water, and I'm going to hit that on my paper towel before I touch that area. And I'm going to be adding just a little bit of concentration of that color, adding it on the edges. And again, I'm using the tip of my brush to just tap that in there. The reason being is that the center of these little flowers do have a texture in the middle, and I want to try to duplicate that if I can. Now I'm going to let that dry and then come back to them. Let's go ahead and start with our morning glories. I'm going to come in with just some plain water and wash it over my surface to do a wet on wet technique. So I'm just going to wet those areas. And then I'm going to be coming in with my blue. Oh, I do have a little bit of orange in my water. I can see that all right. We'll see what happens. Sometimes orange and blue will cancel each other out. So I'm going to be mixing this color to a tea consistency as well. And I'm going to float that color in there in my shape. Now, if you want to leave a little bit of your white paper showing, you could do that as well. I'm going to come into that cobalt blue in my little tray here, pick up a concentrated form of that, and I'm going to tap that in to the areas at the base of where I drew my stars, and just tap that on there. Because my paper is wet now, that color should blend on up or bleed up into those areas. And I'm going to be creating those lines. You might want to follow your pencil lines up. Often you'll see a little divider that happens with these flowers on those lines, even though the petals are not necessarily separate. So I have one, two, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3. I want to make sure I'm kind of keeping into that 5 feeling if I can, and tap along those lines. So I'm creating that little star area there. Now, if you feel like you might want to add a little bit more water, come in with some clean water and tap in that little bit of that area as well to get that color to move a little bit and push and pull your color. So I'm pulling it out to the edges. Okay, I think that's going to be really pretty. Okay, let's sit. Let's pop down and do this next one here. I'm going to add a little bit more water. I'm using the Canson paper today, and I did have a lot of orange in there in my brush. I should have washed that out better. I'm using the Canson paper today, so it's not 100% cotton, so it's going to dry a little faster than what it would dry if it was 100% cotton. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tap my blue in, and then I'm going to pick it up, a concentrated form. See where I had drawn those lines, tap that in to those dividing areas, that little star shape. Now you can see it. It looks like a little starfish that's sitting there. And then again, if you want to soften it more, come in with some clear color, push and pull your color a little bit, and you can soften those edges if you feel like your color is a little too harsh. We might need to even darken them when we go back, because watercolor is always going to dry a little bit lighter. So we'll see what we end up when my paper dries, but they're looking lovely right now. Now these have dried quite a bit, so I'm going to start up with my purple. I want to make sure this is my lightest shade that I want to do, so I want to make sure I'm adding a fairly good amount of water into this. I'm going to give my brush a tap, and then these are going to be that longer, skinnier. Now I'm using a 6. You could actually go down a size if you had one, but I don't really have a good one. But I'm just doing these wispy, and I'm kind of curling them as I go. And I really want to make sure that center is dry, because if I get too much purple into that center, it's going to end up dulling that bright yellow. Okay, I'm going to stop there and not overwork it. Let's come up to the top so you can see how quickly these little flowers come to life. And by pulling from the center, pulling out, I will just naturally have a larger concentration of color at the end of my little petals by doing it. If I pull in, my concentrated color will be in this area, and if I pull out, it's going to sit at the end. Just a little something to keep in mind if you're looking to change your flowers. Now I'm going to come up and do these next ones here. These are so fun to do, and they make a quick, beautiful flower. Okay, let's add these ones in. Leave a little bit of room in these and not combine them all together too tight in case you would like to add another layer of darkness, so then you have some room to be able to paint them. So leave yourself a little bit of open area. Okay, that looks good. Let's work a little bit on these leaves since we're waiting for this area to dry. I'm just going to be choosing a medium green called Hooker's Green. That's one of my favorites. So I'm going to come over to here, add this color here, and that's the color I'm going to be doing my big old leaves here. I'm just going to be going on dry paper and adding my color. So as I'm coming around, I'm giving this a push and then lifting it when I want to come to a point. So that's how you're going to control your brush. You're going to push down to make a wider spot, lift it up as you're coming, less pressure, and that's going to be able to make a better point on your item. Now while this is wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit more color, and I'm going to tap that in my center, just a little bit there, and I'm going to tap in some lines coming out just to give it a little bit more interest. I can tap it on the outside too, and that color should blend. And we'll leave it be and see what happens. Okay, let's fill in a few more of those. It's always nice to do a variation of color so that it doesn't all look the same. So if you want to even pick a different color to tap it in, or this one has less pigment, more water, so it should be lighter. And that's just going to add a little bit more interest to my leaves. If you get too much water in, tap your brush on the paper towel, remove some of your water, and then come back in, and then you can pick some of that color up so you don't feel like it's so oversaturated with water. I'm going to take down, this is a small brush. I don't even have a number on it, so I have no idea. It's a very inexpensive brush, but it's one of my smaller ones I have. I'm going to come in and do a few little pull lines with this. These little skinny brushes are perfect for doing these lines like this. This is where I'm going to try to do this tendril. I haven't had a lot of practice lately with using these small little brushes and doing some loose line work. This is one of those things you might want to practice off the side of your paper first before you were to do it on your paper, just to see, do a little bit of practice and do that. Oh, I forgot to mention too, with the watercolor, you do want to soften any of your lines through your pencils before you actually put the watercolor on, because once you put the watercolor on, you cannot get rid of it. The pencil marks are there and you'll see it. So you'll either okay with the pencil mark and you're going to leave it there, or you're going to know that you're going to do a little bit more pen work at the end and you can change it out then. So let's use this brush here and we'll do a little bit of the work on these little ones as well. I need to change up my color so it's not going to be the same as my other leaves, just to have a difference. So I'm going to change up that color a little bit. I find it easier to pull my brush this way. I'm right-handed, so that might have something to do with it. But I find it a little easier to, when I'm doing those leaves, these ones here, is to start at my leaf point and then press and pull. That's what works for me, but definitely practice that pulling a little bit before you do your work and see what works for you. And then when I'm pulling a long line, I like to do it towards me. This has got a little bit of pressure. I'm not applying a lot of pressure to this brush when I'm pulling those lines. The less pressure, the smaller the line you're going to get. The more pressure you apply, the thicker your line will be. So I'm looking to create a little thin line. Now, you know, I should have done that blue part, but that's probably a good thing. I let that dry underneath, and that's probably a good thing. I had a little bit of separation for that fluted area underneath my Morning Glory. I kind of even forgot about it, but maybe it was a happy accident and I didn't do it too quickly, because what could have easily happened is that my colors would have all flowed together and I wouldn't have had any separation. So I'm going to be changing up my colors a little bit when I'm coming in and doing these areas, so I have somewhat of a separation and it doesn't all look the same, like all my greens are the same. A way you can change it up is by adding less water, and they would be darker, add more water, and they're going to be lighter colors. So I'm just taking a look, making sure I have my stems connected here correctly in the right direction. This would be here, there. So I'm kind of ending all at that one spot. Okay, that's looking good. I wanted another one of those little tendrils. I can see I drew it in here. I'm just trying to use the tip of my brush to get this to go along there. And again, that has more to do with how hard you're pushing on your brush. Let's switch back to my other brush and let's do these blue parts now underneath, that little bugle part underneath there. I'm going to go ahead and tap that color in. I think my green is dry enough. Even if it isn't, I would be okay with it blending a little bit with my green. Now, because this is underneath and I need to have some sort of separation in my colors, I can choose to make it darker, perhaps even leave a little white line there, which I'm hoping you can see there's a tiny bit of white line there. I would like to keep that if I can. That's just going to help separate out that color by giving it a bright highlight on that edge. I'm going to try to make this darker, so I'm going in with more exact concentration of the paint, less water. Try to do the same thing here as well. Leave a little white spot if I can and tap in that spot. I'm thinking that looks really good. I don't mind the look of that already with what that's got going on. Let's work a little bit more on the leaves. So it's dried now. I can come in and add another color. Perhaps I'll add a little bit of Payne's Gray to my green and add a little bit more darkness. You have to have some contrast. I pointed that out when I was doing my last live, which was all about leaves. And you can see what a big difference it makes by including the contrast into your painting, which means that your colors need to have some difference. If they're all the same, they're not going to look like there's any contrast. It doesn't add as much interest into your painting. So it's something to really keep in mind. A good way to check your contrast is to take a black and white photo of your picture and then take a look at it. And if all your colors are looking the same, you'll know you need to add some depth to it. With watercolor, you can basically only add the darks on top of your painting. You can't come in and do the lights as easily. You could add a little bit of white gouache on top of there, a little white pen work. That would help to add a little bit of white if you need to. I'm going to come in with my purple. Now this time I have more color concentration, and I'm going to be adding this on. Now this would be considered dry paper wet paint. So this is going to be a lot more controlled lines, not as soft lines, because my area is dry. I'm just coming in and simply doing some here and there, not coloring in everything, and adding that line. So you can go now into some of those areas that you left white to add in another division of petals. I want to make sure I'm making some long ones too, so they're not all short, because those flower petals are longer petals. Okay, thinking that looks good. Let's let that dry a little bit. Let's add a few more up to my buds here. Let's add a little green cap to those buds too. Let's add a little bit underneath there. Connect them on like so. Okay, let's take a look at some of these divisions here. Do I want to strengthen any of my lines? I can come in and add a little bit more blue. I can take my color, and this would be kind of called like a glazing layer. So I can come in, this maybe be ink consistency, and I can come in and add just a few bit more darkness. My paper is dry now, so this would be considered a dry look on top of here. I'm adding it in, trying to be loose about it, pushing and pulling with just the tip of my brush. And remember, you can always go back in and add more, but you can't take it out so easily once you put it in. So give yourself a little bit of time to develop those spaces. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to add a little bit more darker underneath here. Come in, bump it up a little bit. Still trying to keep that little bit of that wet white line if I can as a highlight. Okay, I'm really liking those. All right, let's add a tiny bit more color on those centers. Let's add a little bit more of the yellow into that area, my brighter yellow. Oops, it's a lot of yellow. And I wanted to be able to tap a little bit of the brown or rusty color in there too. Okay, so there we go. Let's add maybe a little bit of this color and tap, tap, tap. Just choose a side to tap it in and leave it at that, probably not everywhere. So again, I'm still trying to keep a little bit of that tap, tap, tap feel. So I'm getting a little bit of texture look to my flowers. So I'm going to come in and just add a little bit more sketchy quality to this, like I'm doing just a pen on there and darkening them up just a little bit, making them less white and adding some detail that way, just to strengthen those little areas. Okay, I'm liking that. Now you can decide whether or not you want to add some pen work to your items. I usually do. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I normally do pen work to mine, but I'm going to just come in lightly here and there and not doing it everywhere. And I like to have that sketchy quality to it, loose line work. If you follow my channel, you know this is one of my favorite things to do. I love to scribble. So I'll let you take a look of what the difference is. So this one I've added some pen work. These ones I haven't. I've laid in a few. So you can decide whether or not it suits you and whether you would like to do this. There, you could come in and do line work with your gel pens, with your colored pencils. Those would make lovely lines and marks as well. Adding those types of mixed media elements. So all of a sudden I'm turning my watercolor into a mixed media. And this is going to require, I get more loose lines with my pen than I do with my paintbrush, and I like that look. This is a Micron pen, a number 01, a nice little small line that works great for doing this line work. Okay, let's go ahead and just make this a little bit more loose. You can double over your lines. They don't have to follow what you painted or what you drew. You can add a lot more openness. So that flower at the top, I just doubled up my lines, added a few little extra curls that weren't even there, and just made it free form so I can look and loosen up my painting. I love doing watercolor. Let's turn it this way. I love doing watercolor just for the simple fact of I can open up one box of paint and have all of those colors available to me and create a beautiful painting. And that's all I need. It's one box of paint and some paintbrushes. And there it is. I think it looks lovely. And hopefully you will come along and share yours too. I do have a Facebook page, Painting Crafty. You are welcome to post yours underneath the post for this tutorial. I love to share other people's work because it most certainly doesn't have to look like mine to be good. And I think you encourage other people to try as well. So please share your work. I love to share your work, and you encourage others. And it is so fun to have such a friendly community who comes along and draws along with me. So yes, please do share. Well, if you are new here and you found value and maybe you like to do arts and fun crafts, come on over to my channel, subscribe. I love to have new creative friends join me. Make sure you click that bell for notifications for YouTube. They'll send you a new notification once I have a new video put up, so then you can keep in the loop and find out what we're making here on Painting Crafty. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment if you think you might maybe be making one of these September cards. And if you have a September birthday, I'd love to celebrate with you. Well, that is it, my friends, for today's tutorial. Hopefully you'll come back and see me again, and next time you'll create along with me.